Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2 of Marvel's Runaways. So, before I get started, I will be going into non-spoilers, so just to kind of give you like a rough feel of how I felt about the season. I thought it was a great season. It's kind of a lot of interesting things. I like how they handled a lot of stuff in this season, kind of building upon a lot of stuff that was like set up in season 1 that they kind of like delved a lot more into in this season. Also the Runaways relationships, but not even just theirs, Pride's relationships, just like kind of the ups and downs of it throughout everything. I knew things wouldn't work out perfectly, but I did not see things kind of playing out the way they did, and I kind of understand why some of the characters did some of the things that they did. Even though you can be like, why did you do that, you can still kind of understand to some levels. So I thought it was kind of interesting, like just the dynamics, just kind of, you know, it's like where things were kind of good at the end of season 1, now you see that there's a little turbulence in certain regards. I thought that was kind of pretty nicely held, but it's also like we are expanding upon the world of Runaways, just kind of like everything that's possible in this world, finally understanding so much that was brought up in season 1 that we still have so many questions about. But I thought it was really nicely done in that regard. So if you have not seen all of season 2, do watch it. It's really good. It's really worth your time. So that's the end of my non-spoiler review. From this point on, I will be going full into spoilers, and once again, this is going to be me covering all of season 2. I'm not going to be covering anything in any particular order. It's just I'm going to talk about it as it comes to my head. So if you have not seen all of Marvel's Runaways, don't listen, because like I said, I will be spoiling things. So okay, so there's a lot to break down about this season. So I guess I'll kind of break it down, maybe, you know, Runaway, you know, and parent situation, and kind of break it down like that, like individually. So first, let's talk about Alex's situation this season, which I'll go ahead and say it from the beginning. I think Alex is the one that's got like the other Giborium in him. I think it's just certain aspects of his, like the way he shifted a lot, like even the whole thing of like him like putting the gauntlet up to AWOL like that, because he's like, I don't know, I didn't see straight. It's like, was that him just consumed by revenge? Because it just seems, personality kind of seemed like it was a little all over the place, but at the same time, it's like, I guess it was also consistent. So it's like, my money was on him, because I'm sure Nico's whole situation is just like part of who she is, so that has nothing to do with like an alien or anything like that. But who knows? And my money's on him, but maybe not unless there was secretly someone else there, because it's like it was either the parents or the kids. They were the only ones there at the time. So not unless it was just someone nearby else that got it. But nevertheless, like I said, Alex's storyline really kind of, it's very interesting, because like Alex is trying to be the leader and everything like that. It's a role no one else really wants, because it's kind of hard, because you have to, like as he says, like you have to make a lot of decisions that not a lot of people agree with. Still kind of having to suffer for a lot of decisions he made last season, like for instance not wanting to go back for Carolina, and kind of still getting chastised for that, and just because he was the most intent on taking down their parents when they were trying to find a way to just live and survive, which he was too, but for most of the season I felt like he was more dedicated on taking down his parents, especially after the Darius situation. For one, that took me by surprise. That like I knew they were going to be buddied up after season 1's finale, but I didn't expect it to kind of be what it was. Even Darius kind of like joking with Alex and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you're going to do some work you ain't going to like, and he's like, oh man, don't make me do this, you know. And then it's like, wait, what? You want me to paint this room? It's like, yeah, you've watched too many Tarantino and Scorsese movies, bro. So there was that. Even kind of, you know, getting tight with Tamar and Tamar's little sister, Livy, which even Tamar was like, I know who the hell he is. Like, obviously they're wanted by the police because they're, you know, wanted for Destiny's murder and everything. I thought that was kind of interesting how they did, you know, kind of on that whole Alex situation, is that this season played his mom up, you know, Catherine up to be more of a villain. Like even the fact that she's willing to go even further than Jeffrey is. But to be fair, they kind of set that up even in season 1 when we kind of got the flashbacks to see like everything, decisions that were made. Like she's the one that kind of jumped the gun to try to take like the opportunities that Jonah had presented. She's the one that kind of helped jump at it. So it's like for her, I guess you could be like, that's the mother side of her kicking into like, I'll do whatever it takes to save my child. And like, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, Jeff's situation is just because of his connection with Darius. So that's what kept him from ever doing that. I would have actually expected him to do it. I was actually so certain when the deal actually went down and Darius sold Alex out. I was like, the moment he gets a chance, Jeff is going to put him down. It's like, oh, Jeff didn't. It was actually Catherine, and Jeff had no idea about it, which is like, man. Because I think even for an instant, I don't think Catherine did ever think about the fact this of like, oh yeah, because she's so busy trying to, like that, doing all that, she didn't realize how tight Alex was with Darius. She didn't realize how much of a blowback that would have. Because it's not just the Runaways kind of screwing up in certain regards. It's pride as well. The parents, because they do a lot of things too. Because, they're all trying to justify their actions as being like, oh, we're doing this for our kids and everything, So I just thought that was kind of an interesting dynamic. But like, the fact is that Alex would do what he did, like, because I brought it up, like, maybe he's possessed by an alien, the reason why he kind of seems like he kind of flies off the handle in certain regards, like I said, with the AWOL situation, and, like, when he was freaking out about the Livy situation, he calmed down and came up with another plan, so it's like, was that him? Was it the alien? I kind of feel like if it was the alien, there might have been a little bit more to it, like, they would have found a different way, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see in that regard, but I think you could make the argument he's kind of got a mean streak in him, like his parents. Like obviously his dad kind of, has his past, so that darkness kind of has a tendency to probably flow into Alex and kind of, make him kind of want to do whatever it takes. Even he's the one suggesting it later on that, hey, maybe, we can't keep our hands clean, which is kind of interesting because in the grand scheme of things, yeah, they've kind of got mixed up. They've got mixed up in certain things and gotten their hands a little dirty, but none of them have actively gone out of their way to kill someone like their parents have. So they've always kind of stayed clear in that regard. Obviously, that changed with the whole Nico situation, but we'll talk about that soon enough. But it was just interesting hearing that coming from Alex's mouth more so than anyone. But I guess at the same time, it makes sense because for him, it's like, I'm the leader and I'm the one that has to make these type of decisions. Like, if we want to beat our parents, we might not be able to walk away from this keeping our hands clean in that regard. Because, like, the whole thing is to not be their parents. But it's like, maybe they ultimately have to be like them to beat them. But Alex making the desperate moves that he's made, because it's something even his dad was talking about. The fact of the matter is, you're flying by the seat of your pants with this situation. Like, that's the thing. Alex admits later on, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still in the process of figuring this all out like you guys. But for him, he makes these choices because he feels like he has to, because it's like, anything that happens is on him. It's like, it's his job as leader to, because I'm sure it also comes from the fact is, Alex doesn't have any superpowers. Like, everyone else has their thing. They've got tech, they've got, something. They have a dinosaur, they have a staff, they have fistigons, they have superhuman strength, they have alien abilities. But for him, it's like, all he has is his smart. So it's like, if I can't use my smarts to help these guys, then I failed. That's the only thing I'm good for. I think that's also another thing too. Like, Alex overcompensates for the fact is that he thinks he has no other value other than that. I think he never really dives into it, but still, just like the fact is, because he's trying to outsmart everyone, that AWOL situation did not play out the way I thought it would. Like, I had my feelings, like, but I thought I didn't expect him to do like the double cross against Flores and work for the parents. It's like, I figured he was going to, work his way. Because I like that shift, because I was like, whoa, is he going to shift into like a main antagonist standpoint? He kind of did for a little while, but it still kind of took me by surprise. I was like, because Flores has kind of been behind the scenes. Obviously, he's kind of like their fixer, Pride's fixer, but it was like he was never like the active threat that AWOL eventually became, which I thought was kind of interesting, because it's like, you remove this one character, Flores, from the background to have AWOL not only go to the background, but even the forefront of everything. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I was really happy when Molly ended up kind of messing with Flores, and because they're like, oh, they don't know about me, like, she used the superhuman strength, the team, Runaways show up to save her, but it's like, oh, she's got his hand, or like, kind of should have figured as much, because Pride didn't tell them all about that. But nevertheless, another element kind of about Alex that I thought was kind of interesting and I thought was pretty nice this season was like him dealing with the whole Carolina and Nico situation, because it's like, because it's not something we're like completely shying away from. It's like, no, we delve into that because, like, he's happy for them and everything, because literally he's the only one amongst the Runaways that kind of doesn't really have anybody in certain regards. Because even though it's not like relationship wise, like, he has his friends, but even Molly, even though she doesn't have a significant other in the situation, she still has Gert. Like, Alex doesn't really have anyone to be very close to, and I guess maybe on some level that's why, because for him it's like his feelings, as he kind of talks about it later on, don't really kind of work out because things didn't work out between him and Nico. Then there's a whole situation with him and Livy that didn't work out, but that's also because he kind of got in his own way, handling things the way he did. Livy went behind his back and went to the Runaways and told them about what he had planned. Because even I thought it was kind of neat that moment, Alex is being like, you guys are hypocrites. You've literally all done some terrible things and you're getting on me for making this decision. I'm trying to make sure that we all come, like, because like I want to take down our parents, like, because he became so fixated on it because of that whole Darius situation, because it's like, because Darius was the first time it had gotten that personal for Alex. Other times there were kids, yeah, he was pissed about those situations, but those weren't kids he really knew. Darius was someone that he got to know, and then to know that your parents were the one to do that, you know? Because you already thought you didn't know your parents, and now you see them go deeper and deeper off the edge like that. And I like that it did cause some tension between Catherine and Jeffrey. He really didn't like that aspect of her this season. Because for one, it's like that, hiring AWOL and the cops to put a hit out on Tamar and Livy. It was just to be like, yo, show them, like, you know, a warning. But it's like, for one, Jeffrey was like, dude, Alex was there and a baby was there you could have hurt. And even then, Catherine never talked about the baby situation. She only talked about the Alex situation. What's interesting though is when they went to go see Tamar later, you kind of see her looking at the baby, and I think it kind of sinks in like, oh wow, I took this baby's father away from him, you know? I took her man away from her, you know, in Tamar's case. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting aspect. Even the fact is, when it's all said and done, Alex did still manage to take his parents down. Because that also sets that whole situation aside. Like, it's kind of fascinating. It's like, when it was all said and done, it's almost like he didn't care about taking down anyone else's parents. It wasn't just about taking down the entire group of Pride. More so than anything, it was his own parents, because it was the personal connection. It was the personal attack. The personal vengeance. If he wanted to say it wasn't, it was for justice, but it's like, no, it was 100% revenge. I thought that was kind of interesting. And like storylines kind of like turning around the way they did, like the whole like gun that Darius set him up with, putting his fingerprints on. We still actually don't know what it was exactly that crime was associated with, but it's so interesting that it like came up early in the season, and then it literally comes back in the season finale in that regard of him setting his parents up like that. Because I like it being like, I didn't do this. You literally had choices and you made the wrong choices every time, and now you're going to pay for it. So I thought that was kind of interesting in that regard. Like I said, I guess part of me was kind of expecting, even when Alex was pulling his like Hail Mary moves, I was thinking like, oh no, it's going to work out, man. Turns out not to be the case, but still, like, I think every time like, oh, he was about to make a Hail Mary move, I thought that was going to honor. The whole like Strike Force hitting their hideout, I thought was kind of like for one, I thought that was a really good episode, but just how they handled that situation, just kind of being like down, you know, Gert, Chase, and Old Lace like that, I thought was kind of nice. Like, and also like, you know, Nico handling things, which that kind of dives into the whole Nico situation this season. I thought was kind of fascinating. For one, we kind of saw more of her powers and more of the staff. It's something Tina brings up once in the episode, in the season, being like, she saw it once before and she just leaves it at that. So like, obviously out of anyone, she has the most experience with the staff, but you know, we've never seen her like that before. So is it something, because it's something Nico kind of hinted at, where it seemed like the staff kind of has its own consciousness, because it's like, for her, it's like, it feels like it's trying to like tear into my skin, like it's trying to take control or something like that. But obviously we see it like when the black marks, well, the markings kind of, it seems like her skin kind of gets dried up and like scaly around her eyes. It kind of shows that the staff is kind of taking control like that. We actually don't know whatever happened to AWOL and his people. To be fair, they like disappeared. I thought like they got teleported, but their clothes got left behind, and we never hear from them for the rest of the season. So I'm like, she might have legitimately vaporized them or something, which is interesting if that's the case. It's also scary. It just shows you how powerful Nico is. I mean, it was kind of interesting because you had that scene earlier where like Nico, Carolina, and Molly went up against her mom, and she laid them out like it was nothing. Even doing the scary thing of freezing the water so that Molly couldn't get out. That was scary. And I think that was kind of an interesting aspect of the season in general, is like how brutal the parents were this season. Because for them, it's, once again, it's like, how far are you going to use the excuse of love to do the brutal things that you are to your own kids, you know? it's scary. I mean, hell, what makes it even scarier because that wasn't even your own kid you did that to. I mean, you laid Nico out, sure, but Tina did that to someone else's kid, you know, kids that you once claimed to care about because you were all some tight knit little group like that. So it's just kind of interesting in that regard. But I like the dynamic of like Nico and Carolina, like their relationship this season, because it's like, you know, Nico being frustrated because it's just like things aren't going the way she wants them to. Like, because for one, it's like she got the staff, but it was after her mom kicked their asses. It's like, I didn't even take it from her. She gave it to me because she was thinking like, no, like Nico's not going to take the staff and leave. She's going to stay, which even she was like, wait, I actually like that. That kind of caught me by surprise because she actually thought Nico was going to stay. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. What made you think that? I guess she thought like, you know, like the parents, the pride is kind of interesting how they think their kids are going to be 100% okay with what they've done and be able to just move past it. It's like they have the right to be pissed like they are. Like you've murdered not just 15 people, more than 15 people, you know? But the whole situation of, you know, like from the very beginning, like when Carolina, and I'm kind of tying this all together, but when Carolina started hanging out with Jonah, I'm like, oh, that's going to be awkward. You're literally hanging out with your dad, who is the enemy naturally, but he's also the reason why all this happened. All those people had to be sacrificed. But on top of all of that, he's also the dude that killed your girlfriend's sister. I was like, that's going to suck. And I didn't know if Carolina was actually ever going to tell Nico the truth because, like, well, Alex told Nico the truth about Amy. To be fair, he told her 2 years later. So that's one thing. But at the same time, it's like, there's certain things, it's like, because I was kind of worried for Carolina because I was like, I hope Nico doesn't turn into a situation where it's like she looks at Carolina and it's like, I can't help but look at you and see the man who killed my sister. Luckily, it never came down to that, but, you know, it still kind of happened in borderlining aspects. You know, obviously Nico killing Jonah. I keep calling him Julius. Have I been calling him Julius the entire time? I hope I haven't. I kind of get lost in my own mind in certain regards like that, so I hope that is not the case. If I have been, I meant Jonah the entire time. I kind of get the feeling like I've been saying Julius. If not, this is just going to make me look crazy, so I apologize. I sometimes get a little rattled and stuff like that, because I think I start randomly grabbing names for other TV shows that I'm watching, so it's a whole thing. I do apologize. Getting back to what I was saying, so all of that just kind of adds up, especially because that also bothered me too, because like for Carolina, it's like, you know what your dad's done. You literally know that those sacrifices were made because he needed those sacrifices, that like everything that's going down is potentially going to be on him. It's like, but how can you trust him so much? That's why I thought it's kind of interesting, because Carolina and Chase are the only ones who are that intent on forgiving their parents. Everyone else isn't. Like, Chase has always been a little more, I guess because there's always been that aspect of like, his dad's always been, you know, Victor's always been a dick, but now it's like he got better, and then it's just kind of like he wants his family to be good. He wants to have that normal family, that desire to have that good family. I think that kind of overrides his reasoning and just him willing to give his dad more and more chances. I think it's kind of a similar thing that his mom, you know, Janet's kind of got that same issue too, where she's just willing to give Victor more and more chances no matter what. Chase seems like he gets the moments where he's like, oh, I know better, but the other times I don't. So it seems like Carolina kind of has that same thing when it came to Jonah. And at the same time, it's like, you get it. It's like, you're something else, which we later on find out you're totally aliens. That's pretty cool. But it's just kind of like, she was so fixated on trying to figure out about herself, she didn't think about the greater aspect of everything, because it's like she was lying to everyone behind their backs about the situation. Also, you know, hiding like certain facts from everybody, you know, so it leaves you a little conflicted in that regard. And just kind of dealing with everyone's parent situation, like Robert and Tina, like actually kind of being a good duo this season. There's still obviously some residuals of the whole affair situation, but not nearly to the extent that it was like obviously in season 1. We're kind of moving past that. So Tina and Robert are much more of a team. It was actually pretty dope, the whole fight between them and Nico. That was kind of pretty sexy, and them kind of go hand in hand like that, because you've never really seen them kind of, obviously they were probably still weren't going all out, obviously, because they're not trying to kill their kid, they're just trying to subdue her. But I think it was still kind of a pretty dope fight, just, you know. And I think Nico easily handled herself pretty well in that regard, just kind of using those sick moves. Because I do like the fact is that, like, the whole point is, like, they suck at being runaways. Like, Nico says that literally at the beginning of the season because they get robbed by that dude. Chase has the Fistagon stolen. Alex has his money stolen. It's like, dude, we suck at being runaways, you know? Because the whole thing is, too, is like, we're not superheroes. We're not good at any of this, and we're training to get better at it. It's kind of interesting because we did delve more into the staff. Like, for example, like, Nico can't use the same command twice, which is interesting. Like, because if she tries, it won't work the second time. She can mean it can be used in a similar manner, but the command can't be the same. It does make you wonder, like, is there a time limit? Like, is it like a 30-minute, like, refresh, and then she can use the same command again? Or is it just all in, like, you know, does she need, like, a day of rest before the staff can use the same command again? Can you never use the same command again? I'm wondering about stuff like that. Little details like that. Like, they play with it a little bit, but still, like, you don't fully know what the staff is capable of. It's still kind of a big mystery. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. You know, because I had talked about, like, everyone kind of being, like, you know, Catherine being a little more cutthroat this season. It's like, you kind of, out of anyone, you would expect that from Tina. I feel like Tina didn't. I'm trying to sit here and think. I mean, she crossed the line in some regards, but I feel like she didn't go as far as Catherine. Because, I mean, obviously it's the whole, like, oh, we're not going to keep secrets from each other type of situation, but they still managed to do it anyway, even amongst, you know, that reflects in both Pride and the Runaways. But the Leslie situation I thought was kind of interesting, because I feel like out of any of the parents, she seems the more apologetic in certain regards, because I guess for her it's like she was the one that was the most duped in this situation, thinking it was going to be something that it wasn't. For her, she's trying to put Carolina above this. That whole Frank situation took me by surprise, because like on the Leslie, it's like, oh, we're good, let's be a family again and everything, and it's like, oh, Frank's on her side, he's not getting caught up in this until later on when it's all said and done, when he accidentally kills Destiny's brother. That was something that was kind of left open, but it's like, man, that's still going to come back to bite them in the ass in some shape or form. I mean, to be fair, it was dealt with, so, you know, by Flores, so I was like, I doubt that's, well, to be fair, Flores got dealt with too, so any of his secrets died with him. I mean, AWOL knows, but now AWOL's going too. It's like, geez, everyone kind of got fixed in this regard, so it's just kind of interesting. It just took me by surprise, because I was like, wait, did Frank get possessed or something? It's like, no, Frank's just an asshole. Just because, I guess, you know, it's something that Leslie was kind of hinting at, of like his self-doubt and stuff like that won't allow him to see what's in front of him. Seeing that this whole like church situation is just kind of like a fraud. It's a front. Like, some alien came to my dad and started filling his head with ideas all those years ago. You also play into the whole fact of like, oh yeah, there's still, let's not forget about the whole gross situation. They talk about it, hint to it in season 1. It's the whole aspect of like basically Leslie being groomed to be with him is kind of pretty messed up. He's known her all her life pretty much, ever since she was a little girl, and her dad being like, oh, no worry, they'll only get together when she's the appropriate age. It's still gross and weird, dude. You know, but, you know, I guess in his mind it's like, oh, this is the one, he's so important, he's special, so I guess that's where, like, Leslie's dad, David, kind of let things slide. It's also interesting, too, that they did kind of go down the route of her mother. I wasn't expecting that. Also, I'm curious to see what they end up doing with that, because I was thinking, like, oh, yeah, the whole church was going to be used as something for the aliens, because obviously church is meant to worship them and stuff anyway, so I was like, oh, we're going to go down that route. I thought they were going to try and take control of the church. Seems like I said, that ended up being Frank's whole deal, because he even blames Carolina, being like, oh, it's her and Leslie that led him down to this. It's like, you being a dick is their fault. It's like, yeah, you got lied to, this and that, but you would think that you'd be able to put that all aside for the sake of your family. You acted like they matter. You want to pretend like, oh, they're the reason why you're doing all of this, and it's like, man, you're kind of a dick, Frank. And so you got what you deserved in the end, so now he's kind of locked up. Beyond that, it's going to be interesting to see whether we get more with Frank or not, especially because I love that he went to Aura and Francis about that whole situation. I also love that little comment he made about them being like the kids from, the little girls from, was it The Shining he referenced, I think? and they kind of look at him like, "What the hell did you just say?" He's like, "It was a joke, ladies." And I was like, it just made me laugh because him just kind of being a little smark alley like that. It's like I said, Frank was like, "Yeah, you kind of felt a little good." I mean, to be fair, that was the whole thing. Like Leslie literally said it in season 1 of like, "Yeah, we don't know where Frank's loyalties lie," and it's like, yeah, he flopped a lot because it makes and it seems like. I mean, and kind of what Leslie was kind of getting at is like, it seems like everything you've done from the very beginning has been you wanted to be a part of this church because you want to feel special. You wanted a notoriety. It's like, it's like it gives you a flock to control. It's like people who will hang on your every word, believe everything that you say. And it's like, man. Also, the whole her being pregnant situation. I was like, didn't see that coming either. And it's like, oh, of course, it's going to be Jonah's baby, which is interesting. I wonder what that's going to do. Side note, did she get... I mean, I guess maybe it's like time skips in between episodes and stuff like that. I guess it's not as like, oh yeah, this is like next episode's taking place like 5 minutes later. In some regards, I guess it doesn't... There is some time frame because it's like... And she, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't want to sound like an asshole. So I was like, not unless the actress who plays Leslie, I'm always butchering her last name. It's like, is it Wershing? Not unless she was pregnant in real life or something like that. Because it just seemed like I was like, no, you were like barely showing before, and then all of a sudden, and it's like, oh, so like I said, not unless like she's pregnant in real life. There was time in between episodes, which is a possibility. I was thinking like, no, because they never brought up anything about her pregnancy with Carolina being anything like special in that regard. So it's kind of like, no, it probably is just kind of like space in between episodes. Or, like I said, it might be the aspect of like, oh, maybe she's pregnant in real life, and like the pregnancy went by fast in the show just because, like I said, it was just kind of interesting to me because I was like, holy crap, you're like really showing us, like you weren't like what? So that's just my idiotic brain trying to rationalize and think things through about that regard. But nevertheless, they did set up the whole thing about Carolina kind of potentially taking over the church and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of fascinating. I guess that's kind of leading down the path of like her destiny. I mean, they did see her literally spread her wings and everything like that. So it's like, whether she wants it or not, they're going to continue to follow her. Her grandmother's back there trying to like weed out the corruption that Frank made within the church and everything. It's actually super sad. They sent her to the crater because it's like, oh, she tried to protect Leslie from the whole Jonah situation. She saw him for what he really was, but David was so caught up in everything, he wasn't willing to see it like she was, and sent her to the crater, and that kind of led to her, like the whole reconditioning and everything, and kind of led her to be kind of in the state that she was in. Like Leslie was kind of under the impression like her, even Carolina was like, oh, I thought you just left or whatever. It's like, no, they put me in this situation. To keep me, because like Carolina didn't know about her, and nor did Susan know about Carolina. So that's sad. So much of their lives, they didn't know about each other existing and still being there and under the circumstances they were in. Also, the fact is that it turns out like, oh yeah, what's in the bottom of the pit? It's a ship that comes out like a blob because it can change its shape, which is pretty cool. Because it seems like, I'm assuming that's just kind of meant to be like I guess because of what they are literally energy. They're light, so they don't need like physical bodies. Well, they don't have physical bodies in the ship. They're just energy. So and I guess in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense, the whole like transfer of energy and stuff like that being how they sustain themselves. That's kind of also another thing too, has got to be a little depressing that Jonah was in the body that he was in, of Jonah. Like Carolina's father, biological dad, possessed someone's body, that being Jonah, and he kept that body because that was Carolina's dad, and he wanted to hold on to it, and to make sure that the body stayed in health, he needed those sacrifices. That's what it was. It's not like he needs it to even sustain himself. It's just so he could sustain living in that body for an extended period of time, because that body is the biological dad of Carolina. So it's like, that was kind of fascinating. It's kind of super messed up too, because it's like you literally sacrifice all those lives so you could stay in the same body. Like, part you get, it's like, oh, there's a sentimental reason behind it and everything, but it's like, that's such a selfish asshole thing to do, So I also thought it was kind of pretty neat that they did try to. I thought it was kind of interesting in like that showdown with Jonah, that they had basically, the parents, Pride, were going to try and destroy the ship while the kids were trying to save everything. Because it kind of was interesting, because Gert kind of put an interesting perspective of like, us treating them like a them is what led to our parents putting kids in a box and sacrificing them. So it's like trying not to be their parents. They try to do the right thing. You know, Dale and Stacy did their thing and ended up killing the ship. I thought more so than anything they would have aimed for Jonah. I mean, maybe would have been better if they had. Like, that serum probably would have permanently killed Jonah, potentially. Maybe not. Especially because later on, like, the whole Zabin situation of being like, oh yeah, it's kind of super hard to kill them or something like that. So maybe the serum would have been enough. Maybe it would. I mean, it was enough to destroy the ship. I mean, you had to pump it full a lot, but I'm sure like that probably still would have been enough to kill Jonah. I mean, they didn't have the need to keep any stock around because they thought like, oh, the threat's gone, Jonah's dead, we don't need any more. So why would you have any on stock like that, you know? But also that being a big thing between Nico and Carolina, it's like, you killed my dad, who once again was a bad person, but I thought it was kind of interesting how that kind of affected Nico the way it did, because for her it's like, yeah, I didn't have to go down that route because, you know, because a lot of stuff in this season kind of made her feel like, oh, I'm becoming my mom. Literally, Molly says it because of the way she handled the whole Topher situation, which I'll talk about that next. But yeah, it's just kind of like being told you're like your mom, which like, you know, Nico despises a lot of stuff about her mom being the way she is. She's the more cutthroat person typically of the, you know, pride and everything like that. So to be those comparisons being made and to do something like she did, killing Jonah, which it's something everyone kind of agreed with. I even love the fact is that Jonah tried to sacrifice Jeffrey, and I love that saying of like, oh yeah, like Jeffrey's big, he's got nice stamina, who wouldn't want him inside of you? And Dale was like, I don't think he meant it like that. I was like, I love that. I love Stacy and Dale. They're just like, they're goofball villains, and I love it because they're the most goofball of them all, and just kind of like the little back and forth between each other. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Oh, I know, right? Oh, that was actually super sweet. I was like, oh yeah, like, you know. Because even something Chase talked about later on, they are the most kind of, I guess, also apologetic about the situation too, because they're not as kind of as willing to go through do things as nasty and as bloody as the other parents kind of are. I'd say probably after that, maybe Janet. It's probably Leslie, Janet, and Dale and Stacy are probably the parents you're like, yeah, you've murdered like a whole bunch of teenagers, but well, let's not forget Leslie also killed Molly's parents too, so, you know, it's sins and all that, like, they've all got a lot stacked against them. But you could definitely tell that was weighing, like, kind of going back to what I was saying, like, you could tell it was weighing heavy on Nico about that decision, because it's like, she didn't have to, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, you can't help but understand why she did it, though. It's like, let's not forget your dad killed her sister. As she said it before, like her best friend, the one person she felt like in her household was her best friend, and the only person she could turn to, the only person who'd understand her and take her side, because she's always felt so alone. Like, you know, for Carolina, it's like they both kind of made each other feel complete, because they both felt alone in many different regards. Nico felt alone because like she doesn't have her sister anymore, and Carolina because she feels like she's the only one of her kind, like no one can understand her. That's why she clung to Jonah so hard despite what he did, because it's like he understands who I am, he understands what I am, he holds a piece of all that I am, you know. So, you know, it's actually kind of interesting because I feel like they don't delve into it at all, is the whole aspect of her being half, Gaborium. Like, it's something that never really comes up too much, because I guess, like, maybe there isn't a percentage thing like that, because, like, if your dad's one, you're full on one, because I guess technically both of your parents are technically human, because it's a human vessel and another human vessel with just a little bit of light from Jonah's actual essence being added into the mix. So I guess it makes her full on one as well, because like I said, just like the whole terms of her being like half human or anything like that never come up, so I'm guessing it's not really something that's recognized in that regard, but nevertheless. And since I brought it up, let's talk about the whole Molly situation, which she had a nice progression in this too, because it seems like obviously she was trying, I think they kind of did a nice job of making Molly kind of the one to kind of act as the glue in certain regards, like when there were problems between Chase and Gert, she was there to kind of mediate that and kind of keep the group together. You know, it's like when Alex was keeping the secret about like, hey, the fact of the matter is, he's working with Darius at that point in time. Like, she was the one to kind of be like, no, Alex, you got to tell us where you're going to work and stuff like that, was also kind of getting everyone to kind of back down a little bit. You know, she was the one that kind of went the most vigilante and trying to do the right thing. She's the one I say more so than anyone kind of wears her heart on her sleeve type of situation. But that Topher thing was kind of interesting because I was like, obviously we as the audience kind of knew about it early on, and Nico caught it too. It was like him lying because his situation is very different from Molly's, which we still haven't really dove into that too much. We know it's a connection to the Rock, but what exactly led to her getting her abilities, whereas Topher's situation is different in certain regards, like, because for her it seems like Molly can access her powers whenever she wants to. Maybe when the fire went off and the Rock was there, maybe when it heated up, it kind of blended with her DNA or something like that, so it's so integrated into her essence that it's always going to be a part of her. Whereas Topher, he took the rocks, and like the rocks had given him, because it does seem like they can do more than just give you superhuman strength. At least in his regard, it seemed like he was a little more athletic and just, I guess the whole point is, like, I guess it keeps you strong and young in his regard because he stopped aging, which makes the question is, like, does that mean Molly will stop aging too, just because, like, she's only now coming into her powers, obviously last season, you know, at being 14, so it's like, was she always kind of be stuck like that? Because it seems like Topher had been stuck looking roughly the same even after 8 years, so it's kind of like, makes you wonder about that type of situation, so... And that was also interesting too, because that's something we haven't delved into at all, was the whole Topher thing of, like, he lost control, like, because his whole situation, he became more like a junkie because he, like, I guess when he rubs into his skin, it, you know, kind of works like a drug where it gives it direct access to your bloodstream, and it kind of makes you, you know, kind of take the hit harder and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, we don't really know if he survived or not. Like, the way they kind of, last time we see him, it seemed like he dies. We never cut back at it all, but he does connect to the mystery of Molly's situation because he was there. He did work there, so maybe he holds a piece to it. Maybe we'll see him in the future. I don't know. I actually thought he'd be a much bigger part of this season than he actually was. I was actually kind of halfway expecting him to kind of pop up later on, but he never did. So, but like I said, the way they kind of showed him ending off, it seemed like, oh, that might be him dying, but he still wasn't completely a monster. Like, he did try and push Gert's car out the way when that trash can was flying that way and kind of, you know. And because also for Molly, it's like, oh, he's got to be family, which he turned out not to be. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, kind of like the Carolina situation of not having to be alone. Because it also is like, the fact is he snapped the way he did, hurting the people that he cared about. It's like, for one, she was trying to not go down a hurtful route like Nico did. But, you know, Nico doing what she's doing, trying to justify everything of like, I'm trying to look after you, I'm trying to protect you, I'm gonna look after my family first. Hence the whole, wow, you sound a lot like your mom in that regard. So there's that. But Molly wanted to find a way to kind of just talk him down. You know, it's interesting, like, you know, because she was kind of forced to grow up the most because she is the youngest, so she's had to deal with kind of the most amongst the group anyway, not only about finding out about your adopted parents being murderers, but also, like, you know, about your biological parents being murdered and all of this too. It's a lot to kind of take in, plus their situations as runaways. It's a lot to digest. It was nice that they did kind of give Molly that little quinceañera, you know, aspect to the whole situation of kind of embracing, like, it being her birthday, that they needed something a little more positive their way. Just after everything that they went through, it's like, no, we need good. We need to come together. We need to celebrate Molly and all that she's been through, and just her transition from a girl to a woman, and just how she's handled this whole situation in stride. Because it's like, out of anyone she's handled, like, because even she's kind of like, I'm cracking down, I want to cry, but all of you, even after everything that we've been through, none of you are crying. Even Alex is being like, yeah, dude, not much of a crier. And then the others, you know, I think it was Gert or Chase being like, yeah, kind of big into the whole denial situation. That's kind of how I've been kind of coping with all of this. So I thought that's kind of interesting, and it was kind of like a lovely thing of, like, you know, it's like, even with everything being the way it is, having that one moment, kind of having this moment of coming together as this little family, I thought was kind of a nice episode. I mean, granted, it was kind of immediately kind of a little shattered with the whole Chase leaving thing, which we'll kind of talk about that soon enough. But I thought that was just kind of a nice little, hey, everything's not terrible in our situation. Oh, wait, things kind of don't work out. Oh, crap. I actually noticed that too. I forgot to bring this up earlier, but it was like the whole, like, yeah, Molly doesn't get as tired, like full-blown worn out. It comes up a little bit this season, but I feel like it's not as big as it was. I guess that's more like, oh, she's learning how to control her powers a little bit more, or at the very least she's learning of how demanding her powers can be, because I feel like she uses them a lot more without any breaks in between, but that might just be because she's using it in short bursts rather than kind of like long periods of time. Because it does seem like she gets hungry a lot, so it seems like it probably eats up her metabolism. It might be one of those type of things. So that might be kind of like how they compensate for it, is like her eating a lot is to kind of compensate for the fact is so she won't get as tired. Like, because to me, I think the only time I really remember her kind of resting was after the whole fight where Nico, Carolina, and her fought Tina. I think that's the only time. I'm sure there were other times, but like that's the one time I can be like, oh yeah, she definitely stopped to rest after that fight. But other times you just saw her kind of keep going afterwards. I don't feel like she had as many like, oh, I'm dead tired, I'm gonna pass out moments. Man, I'd almost let it slip my mind, the whole, was it Garcelia situation? The woman that was kind of like family to her, the only biological family she had left in this situation. Is like, man, Tina's brutal. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, Tina choked her with the staff. You could literally see like marks on her neck kind of being like she was being being choked, and literally see the air visibly leaving her. I was like, that's brutal. And kind of, after Dale and Stacy screwed up their whole attempt to go like, oh hey, we're gonna drug this lady, oh she's gonna give us a tape, oh man this worked so well, we're gonna drug her, and it's like she pulls out the gun and they're like, oh my god. Also the whole thing of like them trying to hide from Carolina when her and Jonah were together, and it's just like, did they see us? No, they didn't see. Oh crap, they saw us. Like, yeah, how did they catch us? We're so stealthy. Which I guess that can all kind of tie into Gert's situation with the whole like, oh yeah, like for one, the whole her and Chase thing, which is like, oh, it gets good, it gets worse. Like in some regards, because it turns down to the situation of, I think it's just kind of like Gert's kind of defense mechanism of kind of being like, as long as you kind of don't give into it, you won't have to worry about being hurt, because she probably feels like, oh no, this isn't really real between us, is it? Like, I think, she kind of has some like, I mean, obviously she kind of describes it herself as issues. I think I just rewatched season 1 and I'm blanking already, but I think they bring it up one time about her meds. Maybe I might be thinking entirely of season 2. I know it's like a big thing in season 2, but I feel like they mention it at least once in season 1. But like I said, it might just be all kind of blurred together in my head. But nevertheless, that kind of took me by surprise, like that being a big thing, like the whole med situation. Because I thought, well, for one, I thought the storyline was going to be like, oh yeah, Chase is going to help her through it, which he was trying to, but he was also trying to respect her pride, then trying to handle things in a delicate way, because it's like every time he even said anything, she ripped him apart. Like, she would snap at him. It's like, geez, Gert, like, I know you're very, like, opinionated and stuff like that, but usually you're not that, like, cutthroat and just, like, literal daggers with your words type of situation. And it's just like, she'd always throw it at Chase and be more aggravated at him than normal. And it's like, oh yeah, because of the whole med situation, because she has anxiety issues and a whole bunch of stuff, and like she was literally kind of falling apart in many different regards, which is interesting because that was like something that was never tackled at all. I mean, to be fair, she had her meds the entire season in season 1, at least in most regards, so it's like we never saw that side of Gert, but like her like freaking breaking down like that was kind of like, holy crap, dude. Like, but like I said, I thought they were gonna make it so like, oh, her and Chase kind of like work things out where it's like, oh yeah, he's there to help her. It's like, no, she ends up getting Janet to help her get pills, and that leads to a complicated thing because Chase has a confrontation with his mom, which he gets pissed at Gertrude about, because it's like, yo, Gert, like, all you had to do was ask me. And she's like, right, I didn't even think about it. It's like, yeah, she was so caught up in her kind of like situation that she didn't think straight and wasn't like, why don't I turn to the person that's kind of my boyfriend and everything, to help me with this. But it's one of those situations, I guess, when you're kind of neck deep in something like that, you just don't see the light, you're kind of lost it and stuff like that. Which now I'm thinking about that, it kind of makes me think about Nico too, like the whole thing of like her, light and darkness, because it was just kind of making me think of like, oh yeah, like Nico trying to get rid of the staff, but I think her need for it, because it's like, I guess because she knew it's like, oh, we're about to go do something, I might need it, but I think the staff is also constantly calling to her. She feels the pull of it, but she tried to like buried it away, like in a wall or whatever, drop it down, just I guess so she wouldn't have it, because she was terrified of like what she did to that strike force, that she could do that to someone else. Once again, she still doesn't know what she did to them. Did she teleport them far, far away and they're still alive somewhere, or did she kill them? Like, did they evaporate? Like, what happened in that regard? So, and it's kind of interesting that they, that might be part of Nico. It's like, does that come from her mom? Does it come from something else entirely? Like, is that darkness 100% her? Is it something that she can utilize for good, or will it be something that she taps into much? It could be an issue. It's also because it's interesting, because it depends on what you go by, because some stuff it's like it had darkness in you, never embrace it, because fully embracing it you'll get consumed by it. But I guess in some regards it's like you need to embrace the darkness because it is a part of you. It always will be a part of you, as long as you don't succumb to it, as long as you take control of it and own it, then it's one thing. Because it doesn't seem like Nico's ever really done that in this season. I mean, to be fair, she doesn't like, none of the time she activated it was it intentional. It was all unintentional times she did something with it, But getting back to Gert, like that whole situation, because it's like you went and called my mom. At no point in time you didn't call Dale and Stacy, because that would have meant you had to face your parents. So put me in that awkward situation, have to face off against my parents. She's like, I'm sorry. And that also led to problems later on, because it's like, when it's all said and done, she's considering going to college. Because that's something that none of the Runaways had talked about at this point in time. It's like, well, what are we going to do when it's all said and done? Like, there's no semblance of a normal life for any of us. That was something like Alex was trying to get across to Chase, because Chase was the most being like, I mean, it's easily reflected in season 1. He was the most forgiving when it comes to the parents type of situation of like, oh, there's got to be more to this than that. So he was the one that was kind of looking forward the most to kind of getting back to their old life and everything, or at the very least he kind of reminisced about it the most, I think. But it's like that conversation never came up of like, what will we do when it's all said and done? Gert was kind of looking forward to the future, but it's like, what does that mean? You're going to leave Molly behind? Which is like, no, because then when I become 18, I can adopt you, which is like, oh, that was kind of sweet. But then it's like, oh, what about you and Chase? But then, Chase wants her to do, what makes her happy. It just hurts his feelings that he wasn't a part of the conversation. He even had that moment when they were in that, lover's suite or whatever, and they were putting on that show in front of the lady there, and they were acting like a recently married couple on their honeymoon and stuff like that, arguing until the argument got super real, because it started adding in stuff from like their current relationship issues, and then him being juvenile and throwing her application into the chocolate fountain like that. He's like, yes, I know it's juvenile, but tastes so good. So there was that. The whole situation with Old Lace getting sick like that and it kind of affecting her, which that also was kind of an interesting thing, like that back and forth of like Stacy being Stacy while not being Stacy. I thought was kind of interesting, because it's like, because I figured it had something to do with the drone, but obviously like, the characters wouldn't know about it because it happened outside, so they wouldn't have noticed it. But I was like, that drone does belong to them, so did they do that? And it's like, wow, Stacy did that. She poisoned Old Lace, but didn't realize it would have, because they are psychically linked, it does have the effect it does on Gert, because even though it's like, what was it? I think what's a psychosomatic would be like the appropriate term of like, mentally, it's physically not happening to her, the illness, but because of their psychic connection, her brain makes it real for her own body. So Old Lace feels like crap, she feels like crap. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And it was also scary. It's interesting, Chase was taking her to her parents, and it's like, oh, no, they're not that bad. And it's like, oh, they lock you down there. And they also drug Chase and also put truth serum in him. And I love that whole thing of like, oh, yeah, we sleep. Oh, for one, it's like, I love Gert and I'm afraid to tell her. And it's like, oh, that's sweet. And it's like, I love Molly. She called Molly, she's so cool. Nah, I love Molly, but I mean, it's a different type of love, because this and that kind of going off like that. And also like the whole situation of, oh, I have the bed so cool, we sleep naked and stuff like that. And it's like, oh yeah, it's like, Old Lace and Gertrude are connected psychically, and it's like, it's hard to say which one of them is the animal. You get what I mean? And Dale's like, yeah, I get what you mean. Kind of being like, yeah, I don't want to have this conversation. And then the pause, and then Chase me like, sexually. And he's like, yes, I got what you meant. It's like we're having this weird, awkward conversation. Gertrude got pissed later on when Tina was talking about, like, oh yeah, he talked about how, like, you know, you sleep in bed naked. She's like, why would you even say it? It's like, I don't know. I was on truth serum. I literally just told the truth. It never came out about the whole, like, him loving her part, which that would have been super adorable, but sadly that didn't happen. I mean, it's actually sad the way things got. It's like things got better, then it kind of got worse, and a lot of times it's just kind of a rocky situation. Because I mean, to be fair, and I think it's very befitting of, like, you know, a relationship in their regards too. Because it's like they're kids, they're trying to figure themselves out, plus being in a relationship, plus the crazy circumstances that they're already in. It's kind of a lot. That kind of emotional sensory overload type of situation. You can understand, for one, like, why Chase wanted to leave, because it's like, oh, his dad's sick, and the fact of the matter is he wants. You know, he feels obligated to give a try to his family, because for one, it's like, once again, he's always been the most reluctant, the one that's always kind of had the most shaky resolve when it came to this whole family situation. So he's the one that's kind of willing to give his family more of a chance, because he wants that, because it's like, especially if his dad's dying, like, it puts things in a different perspective for you. It's kind of interesting because Alex kind of had a similar situation with Jeffrey, kind of played out completely different. It's like, oh, we saved your dad, but it's like, oh, I didn't save you. I kidnapped you. And what I say goes, because you're under my rule, on my roof now. I was like, yo, it's kind of interesting little, you know, callback to season 1, how Jeffrey kind of like said a similar thing to him. So I thought that was kind of nicely done, but it's just kind of like, it's a very different dynamic compared to Chase and his dad, especially considering their, like, past dynamic and all of that, and their complicated relationship. And for Gertrude, it feels like you're just, abandoning me and us. You weren't going to say anything. You know, they think he's doing the wrong thing, but for him, it's like, you guys are going to be fine without me. You guys are so good. But for him, it's like, I don't feel like I should stay here anymore. It's like, it's kind of sad, because for him, he feels like he's betraying the people he loves, but he's also trying to, like I say, it's the complicated thing of, like, having your parents be the bad guy. It adds a level of things of, like, no matter what, they've done some terrible things, but it's like they still are your parents. You know that they love you, and you love them no matter what. And that's always what makes, I guess that's kind of why others have animosity towards their parents, like Alex, Nico, and Gertrude, and Molly the most, is because, well, definitely in Alex's case, like, and probably Nico's too, it's like, because you do love them, it makes you hate them more, because it's like, it just makes what they did that much harder for you to kind of digest and kind of deal with, you know, so. But Chase, in the end, is sad, because for him, he tried to do the right thing. He wanted to kind of bridge the gap between the Pride and Runaways. He wanted to try and make everything kind of work out with no one getting hurt. And, you know, Gertrude saying, like, I would rather have my memory wiped, but probably, like, you know, maybe I'd be better off that way. You can tell it hit both of them, because I think Gertrude on some level felt bad about saying that, even though she might felt that. Probably saying it out loud probably hurt her to actually say it, because she knows she was just, you know, just mad, because she probably wouldn't take away that moment, that time they had together. But it's just like, when your heart is broken like that, you give anything to kind of forget that pain. You see Chase kind of being heartbroken too, hearing her say that. It's like, oh, you know, so it's hard to say whether he was in the right in that situation. Part of you's like, after everything they've been through, you should stay, but at the same time, it's like, if your heart's not in it, should you? It's like, I personally kind of lean towards, like, I wouldn't forgive my parents so easily because they murdered more than 15 kids. It's like, come on. But at the same time, it's like, it's hard to say when you're that young, and it's like, these parents, it's so hard to really say what. I don't know. It just makes you wonder. In his case, Gertrude's case has got to be even more messed up, because even she breaks it down later on. So I was like, wait, Dale. So let me get this straight. You're trying to get me. Oh, you, being the murderer that you are trying to get me away from my mother, who is scarier and even more of a murderer than you. Am I getting that right? And he's like, oh, yeah, you kind of break it down like that. It's like, yeah, that is pretty interesting. But obviously you could tell Stacy wasn't Stacy anymore. And it was kind of interesting how she slipped in and out. And I thought they did a very nice job, because from the moment, like, they started blacking out, in particular with Victor, I was like, blacking out, because they did that whole thing of like, oh yeah, like, these beings jump from body to body. Because the way Jonah put it, it's like, he's been here since, like, a very long time. And granted, we only saw him pop up personally in the 30s, but he said he's been here since long before recorded history and stuff like that. So that's crazy. everything he was doing was just waiting so that technology could catch up with their technology so he could free the ship and everything. And that was also an interesting thing too, because for one, it seemed like they kind of stepped Janet out of like Victor's shadow, because like for her, it's like it seemed like she was kind of caught in that lane in season 1, but now it's kind of like Victor was kind of out of the way. He was more important to Jonah's plan, and like her figuring out the abstract like that, her and Victor coming together like that, and it's like, oh, he's once again talking about he's going to change, and it's like, in certain regards, it's kind of like, it's hard to say whether he did or not, because like when we really get to see him, it does seem like he did change, but then it's also later on he gets possessed by an alien, so it's like, is that him? Because in some regards, because it's like, oh, what's all this mess? Wait, Janet's like, you and me made love. And he's like, why? What did he say? It was like, it was on a Wednesday or something like that. And of course, I'd want the lab clean and stuff like that. So it's like, he had certain aspects of his personality still there, but it didn't seem like he was as much of a dick. He was trying his best for the sake of his family. I guess there is truth in the whole aspect that he was dying. Like, I don't know. He didn't go to his doctor's appointment because maybe it would have picked up something about the whole being possessed situation. It's hard to say. Well, I don't know, because they do have healing regenerative powers and stuff like that. I mean, because later on we find out that it's Jonah inside of his body, so it's most likely like whatever condition Victor was in, it was being recovered potentially. I mean, obviously his body's breaking apart just like Jonah's original body. But, it does seem like it isn't like a completely 100% set in stone. It just takes a little time before the original consciousness eventually disappears. Because we did, interestingly enough, see, like, after he died, he slipped back into being the original person because, the Australian accent. Which, the actor who plays Jonah, it's Julian, what is it, Mahonen? It's something like that. And he's actually Australian, isn't he? I don't know. I've always seen him play American roles, but I'm sure he probably is, because the way they just made him have an Australian accent, I'm like, that was kind of neat. Just like that little bit, kind of being able to slip back into your natural accent, if that ends up being the case or not. Because I'm just so used to him doing an American accent, so I just assume he is one, but I doubt it. He probably is Australian. So that was just kind of interesting. I think that was like the first key sign to be like, oh, you possess bodies, and like, because we saw the pink orbs and stuff getting away from the ship and everything. I'm like, isn't that something we should be worried about? Oh, I guess not. It's like, no, worry about that, because that's a huge issue. I didn't even talk about the Xavier situation, which that was kind of interesting. Like, that's a whole thing. It's kind of interesting because that's kind of like at the end of the season, we kind of find out so much about that. Because I was like, wait, the ship can shapeshift, so does that mean the light beings can shapeshift? Because that whole thing, Xavier was shapeshifting. I was like, oh, Xavier, because like we know that, Carolina's brother was on the ship. So I was like, oh, is that who Xavier is? It's like, no, Xavier is a different species from the Gaborians. He's a Zartan. And for Xavier, it's a whole situation of like, I am here to go to my betrothed. I guess the whole situation of seeing, her in her form like that, and, Zabin being kind of like, oh my God, this is my destiny and everything, which that's a whole awkward situation with the whole Nico thing, especially because Nico walks in and it's like Zabin's about to propose and everything. It's like, oh, my betrothed and everything. Makes you wonder, can Zabin do anything other than shapeshift? Zabin was kind of kept to be just like the pilot of the ship and kind of learned so much about the ship and everything like that. But we still don't know 100% of what Zabin is capable of. It's also interesting too that we learned that, there's a hierarchy amongst like the Gaborums, because there's like the whole thing of like, oh yeah, like the baby that Leslie's having is of royal blood, which is kind of interesting. So I guess that means Jonah's royal too. I guess that means so is Carolina. So I feel like that never really came up too much until the end. Like I said, it was just kind of like, I guess, set up for the future of like what that can all eventually lead into. But I wasn't expecting it to kind of play out the way they are. I mean, literally the last episode of season 2 is called Split Up. And it's like, yeah, they were split up all dealing with their parents individually, but also the situation of like, at the end, it's like, I think it's kind of a nice contrast in the show, because it's like they split up for a while, they finally came back together, and they stayed together for the rest of season 1, even though they kind of had their issues. They stay together in season 2, start splitting up just because things just aren't working out, and then they ultimately break up. More so because of extenuating circumstances, like, oh, we've got to handle this situation. trying to fight to survive, even though this is a fight that they couldn't win. Odds were kind of stacked against them in certain regards. I mean, some players, obviously like the Wilders, have been removed up from the board because of Alex, but the others are still up there. And we also have Victor, Stacy, and Tina all being possessed. Once again, we don't know who the other person is. Like I said, I'm assuming it's Alex, but we have to wait and see in that regard. I think it would make the most sense also him kind of being the leader in that regard, but we'll have to wait and see. There might be, a little twist they might potentially have of that. Chase, Carolina, and Janet are being held by Jonah, potentially them being a sacrifice to keep the current body each one of them has. Terrible grammar there. Which is like, would he actually do anything to Carolina? I mean, I'm curious what would happen in that regard. Could she do what they all do, possessing a different body? Could she do that? Or is once again, it goes back to the whole half-human thing of does her human side keep her bound to that body forever? What happens in that regard? I mean, she does seem like she ages like a typical human, so I think that human half does exist. It just doesn't get as talked about as obviously her alien half. So, but I don't know if they'd actually do anything, even though they have the issues that they do. I still think Jonah is still oh, she chose her side, but it's no, that's still my daughter. I don't know, maybe he's still willing to quote unquote eat her, to sacrifice her, because it's no, you still maybe the whole her being his daughter might change his mind. Maybe it won't. I mean, to be fair, he doesn't know about the other baby yet, so he might keep Carolina around a little bit longer until he finds out that Leslie's pregnant. It's oh, this changes everything. Potentially. I don't know. I mean, because that's a big mystery too, is we still don't know why they are here. Because before Jonah died, he was we're going to take some, now we're going to take all. I guess the whole point was the world, they were only going to take what they needed from this world and leave and bounce. Yeah, they might have caused a little devastation leaving, but I guess they were really going to leave, but they were probably going to take some stuff along with them. But now it's now we're going to take this entire planet and make it our own, especially because probably not, I mean, who's to say that was all their people? That was probably maybe some remnants of all that's left of their people were on that ship, and now they've dwindled down to even less. Maybe there's actually quite a few more out there that aren't, just possessing the Runaways or people in Pride. Another angle we'll kind of have to wait on, but it's we have, only a fraction, literally half the team free, where it's Alex, Molly, and Nico, along with Leslie and Zavin. So it makes you wonder, how long is it going to take before the other parents find out about the truth about what's going on with the others. Robert's in his current situation. Obviously, last time we saw him, he has some glass in his neck, but to be fair, fake Tina took care of him for a while. Obviously, you have Dale and Old Lace and Gert, leaving, trying to get as far away from Stacy. Then you have the Wilders in the situation that they're in, and the question then becomes well, they have power and connections, but is there any way to get around their current situation? I guess there's the whole thing. Well, you do have, Catherine being the big time lawyer that she is, so she could easily probably squirm her and Jeffrey out of this situation, but as Molly kind of put it down, as we're not just dealing with our parents because there's still the remnants of them, and that whole battle, because that battle still rages on, even though it's kind of at a standpoint for right now in certain regards because of the aliens and stuff like that, but they also have aliens on top of it, so that's definitely going to be interesting. I wasn't expecting this to become the Alien show. I don't know why. It just never crossed my mind. I thought this might be people with powers and stuff like that, but it never crossed my mind that, we'd be going down the alien route in this at all. There's also a little side note I want to talk about too. It's kind of interesting. Roxxon pops up in this. It was a sign that said Roxxon Energy. I was I'm curious, what is this? I mean, this is technically part of the televised MCU situation of it depends on what they do with the whole continuity thing, because it's the stuff on Netflix. There's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's also Cloak and Dagger. I feel this would definitely be more in the wheelhouse of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Cloak and Dagger, but it still all takes place in a televised MCU, so I think even the Netflix stuff still does count too. But the reason why I brought up the whole Roxxon thing was just because of Cloak and Dagger, and it's I mean, to be fair, things play out the way they did in Cloak and Dagger without kind of spoiling it, but it's well, I guess things wouldn't fall apart the way they did. You'd think the company would catch some flack over everything. So I guess the fact is that they're still kind of around and kicking in LA. I mean, maybe that's remnants. Maybe that's kind of supposed to be representative. The fact is someone else has kind of taken over Roxxon, so it's potentially doing better. I don't know. That was just kind of like a little detail I picked up. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. If it wasn't for subsequently rewatching the MCU, because it's in one of the Iron Man movies. I want to say it was like Iron Man 3 that Roxxon comes up in conversation. But also then, because of Cloak and Dagger, it's like a big part of Cloak and Dagger. It's like if it wasn't for that, I probably would have never been like, oh, it would have not meant as much to me. But nevertheless. This in just general was kind of like a beat down season, which is just kind of interesting because it's almost like there wasn't really much winning in this season. I feel like it was just kind of like, yeah, it got beat down over and over again. And just like when you think you're taking a step forward, something happens to kind of push you 2 steps back in this regard. So like everything kind of fell apart in many different regards and facets in this season. So I don't know if there's going to be a 3rd season. I'm crossing my finger and hoping so. But to be fair, the season literally just came out today at the time of me recording. It's going to be a little while potentially. Whether or not, they come to the decision of coming back for a 3rd season. But I really hope they do because I'd be so interested to see where everything goes from here because there's still so many holes about all of this, understanding what the whole motive of why they came to Earth and everything, as well as, what about the Runaways? What about their counter-strike? How did they get everyone back? How did they fight this enemy when it's already seems like they're in a losing war already? Another thing that also has to be considered too is just a little element that popped up in season 1 and it also popped up in this season a little bit was the whole future thing of like future Chase being like, yo, leaving that message to his dad to not pick up the Fistigons, and it's like he did, but it's like, oh, the fact that Chase sent us this message means that things kind of worked out in the end. It's like, that doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means, because that means everything kind of went to shit and he wants to try and change the past. I think that's what that's kind of saying. So, and it doesn't look good now that we also see that Victor's possessed by an alien, so it's like, oh, that might not look too good for his future potentially. I mean, to be fair, time is time. It's not always set in stone. I mean, but it does seem like everything in this regard, because he picked up the Fistigons and everything, it does seem like oh no, like, yeah, definitely we're still going down that timeline. And as we saw, like, the city collapsed. Now it's like, back in season 1, so it's like, was that from the ship or was that from what's coming up next? There's a lot to kind of break down about that. Maybe that whole ship situation went down a little bit differently in a different timeline, or maybe it is just like no, that's potentially the future they're going to go down if they don't change things and, timelines and stuff like that. So it's hard to say like, oh, what timeline are we currently in? Are we in that same timeline anymore with the whole Chase situation of being like, don't pick up the Fistigons? I think we are, but we'll see. I kind of rambled on for a long time. I was all over the place too. I will admit that. I do apologize about that, but yeah, I think in general, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good